pi over 3 or pi over 6. So you have to actually divide and do the keep change flip. Remember keep change flip? Okay, so which one do you get root 3 over 3? Is it pi over 3 or pi over 6? Pi over 6. Because, let's talk about it really quickly. What is the sine of pi over 6? Looking at your unit circle, what is the sine of pi over 6? 1/2. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Or do y'all not want me to go over this? No. Oh, okay, because I'm like, we all tired. Me too, though. Okay, so the sine is 1/2. And what's the cosine? It's root 3 over 2. So you're going to do keep, change, flip, which is going to cancel out your 2's. These go away. And then after you rationalize it, we actually get this angle. So that's how I know that my answer is pi over 6. So when you see this, if you see root 3 over 3, tangent or cotangent, you need to divide it to figure out the angle. You can't just look at the unit circle. Unless it's sine or cosine, you have to divide it out. Okay, so pi over 6. Number 4, so cosecant is the reciprocal to sine. So this root 2 that we have over here, you could also write this as root 2 over 1, right? Every number can be written as a fraction. So what I want you to do is flip that. Flip root 2 over 1, which is going to give you 1 over root 2. So we need to take the inverse sine of root 2 over 2. 1 over root 2. So let's go ahead and rationalize that. How are you going to do that? What are you going to multiply top and bottom by? So go ahead and do that. Multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. And you'll get that that it's the same as the sine as root 2 over 2. So the answer that I was looking for was pi over 4. Okay, so we already did the tangent of root 3 over 3, so we did that in question 3. So the answer, because there's 2 parts to question number 5. So the first part is asking you for the tangent of root 3 over 3. And I could see, so that actually had a typo in it. That should have said inverse tangent of root 3 over 3, which is why I was really, really lenient on the grading, by the way. So that was inverse tangent of root 3 over 3. So the inverse tangent of root 3 over 3 is pi over 6. So this is how this should have been written. So let's go ahead and fix this. Go ahead and rewrite that question at the bottom. Okay, so the inverse tangent of root 3 over 3 is pi over 6. And then now you need to look at your unit circle and tell me the cosine of pi over 6. So this was like a 2-part question. Part number 1, what is the inverse tangent of root 3 over 3? We answered that question. We already answered it in number 3. Now look at your unit circle. What's the cosine of pi over 6? Root 3 over 2. So that was the final answer that I was looking for number 5. And then lastly, looking at your unit circle, what angle has a cosine of negative 1/2. So again, this is a repeat of this question. So the inverse cosine of negative 1/2 is 2 pi over 3. So we have to take the cosecant of 2 pi over 3. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So what you're going to do is take the sine value and then flip it. So look at your unit circle, find the sine of 2 pi over 3, and then flip it to get the cosecant. So the sine of 2 pi over 3 is what? Root 3 over 2, right? Is that what you all got? Okay, so now let's flip that and make it 2 over root 3. But we can't leave a square root in our denominator, so we have to rationalize that. So the final answer that I was looking for is 2 square root of 3 over 3. And that is your final answer. Okay, so today we're going to start solving equations. Go ahead and take out your notes. We're starting 7-3. So there's only so many different ways we can ask these questions. So you will see a recycle of these questions on your test, on the assignment from yesterday. Make sure you do that. It's 50 points. 5 questions. You get 2 attempts. So go ahead and make sure you get that done. If you didn't do it yesterday, I haven't looked to see how many people have done it yet. I know I got quite a few, but if you haven't, make sure you get that done. All right, so go ahead and copy down these 3 equations. So now we're going to start solving equations. So we're solving for x. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of this 3 that's being multiplied. So how do you get rid of the 3? Divide. So let's divide both sides by 3. Both sides of your equation by 3. So you have the inverse sine of x equals pi over 3. The opposite of the inverse is the sine. So to cancel out an inverse, I'm going to put a sine on both sides. I'm going to put a sine on both sides of my equation. And that cancels out this inverse and leaves me with just x equals the sine of pi over 3. Look at your unit circle and tell me the sine of pi over 3, and that is your answer. So what is the sine of pi over 3? That's your y value. Root 3 over 2. That's your answer. Let's look at number 2. So for number 2, we're dividing by 2. Now, when you divide by 2, and I could have done the same thing over here. Instead of dividing by 3, I could have multiplied by 1/3 to get that pi over 3. It's the same thing. So I'm going to actually multiply by 1/2, which is the same thing as dividing by 2. If you multiply by 1/2, you are dividing it by 2. So that cancels out the 2. So I have the inverse cosine of x equals pi over 4. The opposite of the inverse cosine, because we are solving, is just cosine. So I'm going to put a cosine in on both sides, which cancels out this inverse cosine. So I have x equals the cosine of pi over 4. Look at your unit circle and tell me the cosine of pi over 4. That is your answer to number 2. Question number 3, we need to divide out that negative 4 or multiply by negative 1 over 4. So we get tangent, inverse tangent of 2x equals negative 2 pi. So then we take the tangent of both sides to cancel out the inverse tan. And we get that 2x equals the tangent of negative 2 pi. Negative 2 pi is the same as 2 pi, which is the same as 0. So you need to take the tangent of 0 degrees. Those are coterminal angles on the unit circle. Negative 2 pi and positive 2 pi are the same angle. So tangent is sine divided by cosine. So what do you get when you take sine and divide it by cosine? 0 over 1. And is 0 over 1 0, or is it undefined? Who agrees? Is it 0? Yeah, 0 divided by 1. So we have 2x equals 0 because we figured out that this is equal to 0. So 2x equals 0. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 0. And I just need to figure out if pi over 6 is a solution. So you can do that a couple different ways. You don't have to necessarily write down this equation, but copy this down and solve this for x. Theta x is just a variable. And tell me if pi over 6 is a solution. So take a moment and solve that for theta. Theta is just a Greek variable. It's just still a variable, though. Same as x. So you have to add the 1. And then you have to divide by 2. Now the opposite of sine is the inverse sine. So now in this equation, we're going to insert an inverse sine. So when I insert my inverse sine on both sides, that cancels out the sine. So I have theta equals the inverse sine of 1/2. So now you need to figure out if theta is pi over 6. is that like an actual solution? So is pi over 6 on your unit circle, does that have a sine value of 1/2? Yeah. So the question where it says, is theta pi over 6 a solution? Yes, it is a solution. Because theta does equal pi over 6, so yes, it is a solution. Okay, go ahead and copy down these next few examples. These three, notice that the interval has changed. So now we're looking at if it says find all of the solutions on the interval 0 to 2 pi, that means I'm not just looking at 2 quadrants, I'm looking at the whole unit circle. Okay? So if it says that specifically, you're not just restricted to quadrants 1 or 4 or 1 or 2. So take a moment and copy down these 3 examples, and then we'll work through them together in about 2 minutes. So for question A, I need to take the inverse cosine. I don't have to divide or add or subtract because there's nothing being multiplied by the cosine or added. So I can just put in the inverse. So when I put in the inverse, theta equals the inverse cos of 1/2. So what are your angles? So what angles between 0 and 2 pi have a cosine value of positive 1/2? So there should be 2 answers. So what are your 2 answers? Pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. Who had that for their 2 answers for number 1? Okay, letter B. These are lettered.
5 pi over 3.
Yep, 5 pi over 3.
Not over 6.
No, it's 5 pi over 3. Yeah, your unit circle is wrong. That should say 5 pi over 3. Good thing, let's fix that now. Yeah, 5 pi over 3. Okay, for question B, we put in our inverse tangent. So theta equals the inverse tangent of 1. So that's an easy tangent to find. So tangent is positive in quadrants 1 and 3. So your answer should be pi over 4. And what's your second one? 5 pi over 4. Who had those 2 answers? Okay, because sine divided by cosine, if you look at your unit circle in quadrant 4, if you take the square root of 2 and divide the square root of 2 over 2, divided by the square root of 2 over 2, you get 1. And in quadrant 3, negative square root of 2 over 2 divided by negative square root of 2 over 2 is also 1. So that's why you have those 2 answers. All right, let me take off this unit circle because I need the spice. So we're doing the inverse sine. Of negative 1/2. So what 2 angles have a sine value of negative 1/2? So sine is negative in quadrants 3 and 4. So looking in quadrants 3 and 4, what are your 2 angles that have a sine value of negative 1/2? 7 pi over 6 is the first one. Good.
11.
And 11 pi over 6. Who had that for their answer? Pretty easy, right? Nothing bad. All right, last 3. Go ahead, copy down these last 3 questions. And try to work them out. So this is the hardest one because you have to do some division. These 2, really easy. Again, you're between 0 and 2 pi. So copy it down and solve that, and then we will work through them together. So, tangent. So, tangent and cotangent, those are the ones that are kind of tricky because we have to do some division. But if you take the inverse tangent, so first of all, I'm looking at the whole unit circle. So, for tangent to be negative, that's a negative. Let me put that negative in there. I know that I'm looking in quadrants 2 and 4. So what angles do you think? So remember, you're taking sine divided by cosine, and this keep, change, flip. We already found this actually on our skills check. If you look at that skills check that we did earlier, I think it was like number 3. So what is the inverse tangent? Well, I don't know if it was negative. It might not have been negative on the skills check, so never mind. Okay, so what angle do you think our answer is going to be? Sine divided by cosine, so is it, how do I get that negative root 3 over 3? Yeah, you have to divide sine by cosine. And it has to be a negative. So it's quadrants 2 or 4. The answer is in quadrants 2 and 4, not over 4.
11 pi over 6.
So 11 pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. I agree. So 11 pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. For question E, we're taking the inverse sine of positive root 2 over 2. So sine is positive in quadrants 1 and 2. So the two angles that I'm looking for, there's going to be one in quadrant 1 and the other one is in quadrant 2. So pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. Who had that for question E? So pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. And then lastly, when you do the inverse cosine, so where is cosine 0? So there's two places on our unit circle where cosine is 0. So our answers are pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. All right, how do you guys do on those? Not too bad. Okay, so just a reminder, homework 6 was due Wednesday. You could turn it in today to get full credit. You can still turn it in, but it's minus 15 points, but that's better than a 0, so get that turned in. Check Canvas. Gabby is our homework checker. I think we got homework 7 due Monday, but check Canvas for that. It's either Monday or Tuesday. Also, if you did not do that Canvas assignment, make sure you do that. So every single grade is important at this point. It'll be March, then it'll be May, and then we out. So let's get the best grade we can.